live right here on a Football Friday on the early line on Sports Grid, rounding out this opening hour. And what a game we have based on narrative on Sunday. Of the 13, a lot will be taken from in that early window, 1 p.m. Eastern time kick in Atlanta. The Falcons, Joe, 3-point home favorite against the Dallas Cowboys. The Cowboys are sub 500, 3-4, but all three victories away from the Star. Unlike last week when they were unable to cover or win outright against San Francisco, they have won outright twice as a road underdog. The Falcons, they're 5-3. They're the only team in the NFC South now with a winning record. Joe, what is your expectation for this showdown in Atlanta on Sunday?
Call me crazy. I think points are coming. I mean, I could be totally wrong here, but I don't think I am. I think we are going to get a few points. Oh, look at that total, 52.5. Looks like the market agrees here. God, that is a ridiculous number, Ben, but it's warranted. Is it not here? I mean, let's face it, the Dallas defense has been as bad as we have seen in a very long time, and no Mike Zimmer, no Dan Quinn, nobody is going to make this any better here. They rank pretty much near the bottom in just about every defensive category, and you're talking about an Atlanta team right now that is rolling, Ben. They're averaging what feels like 4 touchdowns a game to begin with. So the idea, to me, I think this game, the team that scores 35 points wins. I don't know that they're going to win by margin either. So I think 60, 70 points in this game is not far behind. Ultimately, it's probably going to come down to a field goal, but I think both these offenses will dominate the defenses in this game.
You know, it really is interesting, Joe, for this Dallas team this year. Over in 5 of 7 games, but their 2 most recent wins, both games under. They did go over in their opening win of the year. One of those games on the road outright as an underdog against the Browns. Nobody would be getting points from Cleveland at this current moment, or at least we shall see. I guess the Chargers are not the strongest of favorites come Sunday. But, Joe, the Cowboys have played in a game this year where they total 50 or higher. It went over because they got absolutely boat raced by Detroit. The Lions winning that game 47-9. The Cowboys did not do much. Dallas has been an underdog in 5 of 7 games already this year, and they are both 2-3 against the spread and straight up. Both of those outright wins on the road for the Cowboys. I thought that might continue last week in San Francisco. Boy, was I wrong. So I am not buying back into this Cowboys team. In fact, Joe, this is a really intriguing game. Atlanta under in 3 straight to start the year, now over in 4 of their last 5. But the Falcons have not covered in any of their 3 full-week home games booked as a favorite this season, or are booked just in those home games at all. Against the Steelers to open up the year, against the Chiefs on Sunday night. And when you look at what they have done the last time they were at home, also with a game we expected to see some points, north of 50 against the Seahawks. Atlanta 2 weeks ago was an outright 3-point favorite, lost that game, and the total stayed under. This is a very compelling Falcons team to me, Joe, one that I don't necessarily buy back in on just yet. But the narratives and the reaction from Sunday are going to be paramount based on how this game ends up. And a lot of that will focus on the quarterbacks. Dak Prescott has been a turnover machine, multiple interceptions in 3 consecutive games for the Cowboys. Kirk Cousins, really good last week. 6 incompletions, 4 touchdowns on the road in Tampa. Joe, Dak Prescott might go over that yardage prop, but he's been a yard merchant late in games when Dallas was getting handled this year. It has not been a strong season for the Cowboys, who are below 500. If they lose this game and look lifeless, listen, Mike McCarthy has no time remaining on his contract after 2024. There could be a change during 2024.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, let's be realistic. Atlanta's defense is allowing 73% completions to the quarterbacks they're playing. Yeah. And Dak is going to have a field day. I mean, he's already on pace to throw 40 or more passes a game right now, Ben, mostly because they're always trailing. And what choice did they have? They can't run the ball. You have a Dallas allowing 28 points a game. They're 32nd, dead last in red zone defense. There's points coming in this game from both these teams.
Second worst scoring defense, Dallas. Second worst rushing defense, Dallas. Could be a big Bijan game as well. Hour 2 next. Welcome to hour number 2 and the first day of a new month. It is now officially November. Live right here on the early line. It's a Football Friday across the Spiz Grizz Network. He is Joe. I am Ben. Thank you for joining us throughout this second hour, throughout our next 2 hours together. It's a full-blown preview of every single game on the Sunday slate. 13 of them in NFL Week number 9. Mike Blewitt will join us in this second hour to give you his insight and analysis for this Sunday slate. Joe, when week number 9 comes to a close after a Monday night football game between the Chiefs and the Buccaneers, that's it for the opening half of this NFL season. 18 weeks now, of course, in the National Football League in a regular season. Half of them in the books by the end of this weekend.
It's kind of crazy, I bet. I mean, we welcome in the month of November, and it's really crunch time for some of these teams in the NFL that have no more room for error, Ben. We saw the Jets last night in a must-win spot. Well, every week's must-win with them, but they got it done. Yep. And there are a few teams this week, Ben, also on the card that have to win. No more room for error. I'm talking to you, Bengals.
Yep, and we will talk about the Cincinnati Bengals and the Miami Dolphins and perhaps a team we did not expect to be a playoff contender before the year, the Denver Broncos, who are 2 games above 500 and on an absolute roll right now. Joe, the Broncos are 5-3. They take that record as an 8.5-point underdog into Baltimore on Sunday. A couple of key notes for this game. Of course, we start with the status of Lamar Jackson. He has missed the last 2 days of practice for the flock, dealing with knee and back injuries and soreness. Lamar is not a guy that often misses practice, so when he does, even when dealing with being a little bit banged up, it is noteworthy. The Ravens are also a team that when they have been favored by a touchdown or more this year, they have lost both of those games outright. It's like, Joe, the Ravens play their best ball against the best opposition on the other side. When they're laying a hefty number, they come up on the losing end. Of course, last week in Cleveland, to Jameis Winston and the Browns, week number 2 as a 7.5, 8.5-point home favorite against the Las Vegas Raiders. So, with Lamar Jackson's status a little bit up in the air, still anticipate him playing in this football game, as the odds makers do, despite a point of movement. Can the Broncos be a live dog on Sunday in the Charm City?
No, they can't be, people. It's you're asking Bo Nix to go on the road. Can we just let's compare schedules to this point here, Ben, on who everyone has played. You've got the Baltimore Ravens at home coming off a terrible divisional loss against Cleveland and a backup quarterback in Jameis Winston, right? You have a Denver team that, hey, listen, have been doing it, as far as I'm concerned, with smoke and mirrors. A lot of that has to do with the fact, hey, you got a rookie quarterback who is going to make rookie mistakes. And as the competition gets better, you'll start to see more and more of those mistakes. The great thing for Denver is they've taken advantage of a weak schedule, and they've been able to use that defense in order to be able to win some games they should not have probably won. But, I mean, listen, Bo Nix, I think, is a great story. I think he's a guy that is the future of Denver with Sean Payton. I think he's found his guy. I think he's good to go. But the reality is, this is a step up in competition off of a probably pretty PO'd Baltimore team losing that game. And Lamar, as far as I'm concerned, even though he didn't practice yesterday, we haven't heard anything to worry about. I say he is going here, and I think Denver's in for a very long day, especially early in this game. I could see Baltimore coming out and pretty much smacking Denver early and often, and then if you're going to ask Bo Nix to play from behind, I don't think that turns out very well on the road. So while some people are scratching their head with the number, I am not. I think Baltimore is going to have their way here and get back in the win column.
You know what is interesting, though, Joe? The Ravens are the worst passing defense in the NFL, allowing more than 291 yards. Jameis threw for more than 330 and 3 touchdowns last week. Bo Nix, 3 passing scores, and a rushing touchdown last week against Carolina. The Broncos have been favored in 3 of their last 4 games. They have covered the number in all 3. Denver has won 5 of their last 6 after a start where Bo Nix looked like a rookie. But to Sean Payton's credit, he allowed his rookie quarterback to go out there to take his lumps and to learn from them. Multiple interceptions without a touchdown pass in those opening 2 games for Denver, for Bo Nix. In these last 6, in 5 of those 6 victories, 8 touchdowns to only a single INT. And the Broncos are the second best defense in the NFL in terms of yardage allowed, 3rd best scoring defense around the National Football League. The Ravens are not that. Bottom 10, giving up nearly 26 points per game. The total intrigues me, Joe. 46 and a hook. Baltimore over in 7 of 8 because of some of those defensive woes. The Broncos have also got over in 4 straight games. This by far, though, their highest total of the year. The previous high was week number 1 for Denver. That was 42 points. And again, we compare the quarterbacks. Bo Nix has looked pretty good here as of late. Lamar Jackson playing at an MVP caliber. Joe, for me, Bo Nix, 1530 in terms of those passing yards. I bet his preseason, season-long passing yards prop at 2850 and a hook. We're on track, Bo. Keep it going and rack up some yardage this week against the Ravens. Should be noted, though, again, with Lamar Jackson's status at least a little bit uncertain, missing practice these past 2 games, or 2 days rather, the Ravens were a 9.5-point favorite earlier this week. It has dropped by a point to 8 and a hook. Huge divisional game, Joe, if the Miami Dolphins are going to get back on track. Listen, they looked good last week with Tua Tagovailoa and that offense scoring more than 20 for the first time this year. But ultimately, it came up in a losing effort. A bad snap, a safety. The Cardinals take advantage. They win at the buzzer. Another Chad Ryland walk-off field goal, 28-27. So some optimism based on how the offense played, Joe, but still a loss for the Dolphins and still a 2-5 record. 5.5-point dog this week in Western New York against the Buffalo Bills, who have now won 3 straight and have covered in all 3. A 6-2 wagon is what the Bills look like at this moment. Can the Dolphins even keep this game competitive?
No. Let's be realistic here, people. Since 2019, Josh Allen, guys, is 10-1 versus Miami. He completed nearly 70% of his passes, 277 yards a game, 29 TDs, just 4 INTs. He's got a 113 rating. And by the way, since 2019, he has faced far better defenses that Miami has had than what they're rolling into Orchard Park for this game here. Tua, 1-7 against Buffalo, barely competing 61% of his passes, 7 touchdowns, 10 INTs. I get the better coach team. I get the more balanced team. I get really overall the better quarterback. I mean, go down the list here, Ben. Buffalo checks every box. There's something about this Buffalo. This is not the same old Buffalo we're expecting the wheels to fall off. They're not. They've won 6 of the last 8, I believe, in this series. There is no reason for me to think the Bills won't do anything but do what they've done to just about everyone else here, Ben, and that is eventually pull away and beat the snot out of Miami.
The Bills are 6-2. They have covered in their last 5 wins, including that Week 2 Thursday night game against Miami, where Tua Tagovailoa threw 3 interceptions prior to the scary head injury that had sidelined him until last week. The offense so much better, though, a week ago. The Dolphins as a dog with Mike McDaniel, now that's scary. 6-11 against the number. Only 3 of those 6 covers an outright win. So maybe, just maybe, we sprinkle on the money line to change things around by the time we get to the pick 6. We'll talk about a huge game in Cincinnati. Bengals have 0 room for error next around the AFC. Live right here on the early line on Sports Grid. It is a football Friday. I am Ben Stevens. He is Joe Raineri. Again, Joe, margin of error for a team that starts winless 0-3 and tries to claw its way back to playoff contention is slim to none. And Slim might be walking out the door, especially if the Bengals cannot hold serve this week at home against the Las Vegas Raiders. Cincinnati, 7.5-point home favorites against Gardner Minshew and the Raiders. 46.5 is the total. Joe, last week the Bengals were a slight home favorite against Philadelphia. No T. Higgins. His status still up in the air for this matchup against Las Vegas. The Bengals are expected to win this game, and based on a touchdown and a hook spread, rather comfortably. Will it be that easy of a stroll on Sunday in Cincy?
Well, this was, I had this game circled as a total trap for the Bengals, but then they went out and got crushed by Philadelphia to drop to 3-5. So the idea that with Baltimore on deck on Thursday night, that maybe this would have been a little bit of a look-ahead spot here for Joe Burrow and company, but they have no more room for error, Ben. That loss to Philadelphia, and the way they lost to Philadelphia, they have no choice here. They have to win this game, and they should. Going up against a Raiders team that is 27th in points allowed per game. This is not a great defense. The Bengals is not a great defense, but they have done a decent job of shutting down limited offenses this year. But when they face teams like Eagles and the Ravens that can control the clock and run it down your throat, that's a bit of a problem. They will not have an issue here with the Raiders, who can't run the ball at all. And they're going to have to be one-dimensional because Joe Burrow and company are going to play from in front in this game. And when they do that, that's not good news for the Raiders. So I do think that loss to Philadelphia puts the Cincinnati Bengals on point in this game. I think they bounce back in a big way, and they get ready for the Ravens on Thursday night on a short week.
5 losses, Joe, for the Bengals this year, over in 4 in their 3 wins, at least the last 2 where they really started to find their footing. Under. I think this is a big game for the Bengals defense to bounce back once again. And as you mentioned, the Raiders have struggled to move the ball on the ground offensively. Good one between 2 former teams that used to play in Chicago. It's now the Arizona Cardinals and the Chicago Bears. Out in the desert we go. A little bit of line movement here. The Cardinals are now the 1.5 favorite, minus 122 on the money line. The Bears, the underdog, 44.5 is that total. Of course, the Bears still probably reeling from how last Sunday's game and the matchup of 1 versus 2 played out in Landover. The Hail Mary, Tyreek Stevenson having to apologize to both his teammates and that Bears fan base. Matt Eberflus looks absolutely lost. I call him Eberfluser now. Shane Waldron is a shell of himself as the offensive coordinator. Joe, I don't have much belief in the Chicago Bears. And the Cardinals have won 3 of their last 4 games. But they have won 3 of their last 4 as an underdog. Now, very slight favorite. We're talking a basic pick'em. Who wins out in Glendale, Arizona?
This is a couple of interesting things here. Number one, I think Eberflus is just a terrible head coach. And the numbers bear that out, guys, as he just never seems to have his teams ready to play on the road. 3-17 straight up, Ben, is what the Bears are on the road. 7-13 against the number under Eberflus. This is not a guy that has his teams ready to play. And I'll tell you this, in the first half, in 20 road games here, the Chicago Bears have led at the half. You know how many times? Twice out of 20 times. They fall behind. They're never ready to come out of the gate swinging, and then they have to claw and fight their way back in the second half here. I like Arizona in this spot here. I do think Arizona offensively can challenge this defense, which has been good. You know, it's one of the better defenses in the NFL. We know this, but going on the road after losing the game the way they did, do we really trust Caleb Williams at this point? I don't, especially early. So I'd only look at Arizona early in this game here and then look to jump in somewhere in the second half if you think Chicago can make the comeback.
The Bears are a 4-3 football team, above 500, but 3 of those 4 wins at home in the Windy City at Soldier Field, booked as the favorite in all. Technically, the Bears have not won a true road game this year, as their 4th win came as a slight underdog in London against Jacksonville. This will be just the 3rd time in 26 games, if this is where the line remains, by the time we get to kick Sunday afternoon out in the desert, that the Cardinals have been booked as a favorite with Jonathan Gannon as their head coach. Of course, he took over the reins last year. They did lose in their most recent game as the favored side. They did win outright in a slight pick'em favorite in week number 2 against the banged-up L.A. Rams. Divisional duel on Sunday. In the aftermath of winning on a Hail Mary, can you continue to ride the good vibes? Jaden Daniels dealt with the rib injury, threw for more than 300 yards, including that bomb to Noah Brown to win the game in its final seconds last week against the Bears. The Commanders, Joe, 3.5-point road favorite in MetLife against the New York Giants. Total is 44.5. Washington is a 6-2 football team. Will they be 7-2? Will they cover after Sunday against the G-Men?
Yeah, and what a weird game they played in week 2. I mean, 21-18, Washington ends up winning, but only because they had to kick 7 field goals because they couldn't punch it in. The 20 times they were in the red zone against the Giants lost their kicker, so they couldn't kick extra. I mean, the whole game was a mess, which is why I think we should expect some points in this game here, Ben. I mean, 43.5, it's a key number, 43. But I think all things considered here, I do think at this point, I think we're going to get way more points than we did in game number 1. So it's an over for me. Just don't trust the Giants. Not enough points to back the Giants here for me.
The Commanders made 7 field goals that day. The Giants did not have a kicker, and it cost them a victory. This will be the 23rd or 24th consecutive game for the Giants as an underdog. 11-11-1 against the spread in the previous 23. More Football Friday next. Plenty more around a Football Friday. Live right here on the early line on Sports Grid. He is Joe Raineri. I am Ben Stevens. All right, Joe. Let's go to Sunday Night Football. The Minnesota Vikings, the Indianapolis Colts. The Vikes, a 5.5-point home favorite in the Twin Cities. You'll notice that Anthony Richardson is not the quarterback used in this graphic. In fact, it will not be the quarterback that Shane Steichen and the Colts use on Sunday. AR now riding pine. It is Joe Flacco making his 3rd start of this year for Indianapolis. The Vikings, Joe, started as a 5-0 football team. One of the 2 remaining undefeateds at that time alongside KC. They have lost 2 games in a row. So, Joe, let's start with Indianapolis because, of course, that has been the attention this week. Anthony Richardson on the bench. He has struggled to develop in the National Football League. His de facto rookie season is this year. He has looked like a rookie. Joe Flacco, the last 2 years, has elevated teams that have a lot of talent around the quarterback position to make them a winning football team. In the games that Flacco has played the majority of, the Colts are 2-1, and he gave them a thrill in Duval County, down by 2 touchdowns in a divisional game against Jacksonville a few weekends ago to come back and tie that one before the Jags did win on a closing field goal. Joe Flacco, as Shane Steichen has said, Joe, they believe that he is the quarterback to make this Indianapolis team a playoff contender. They believe they are a playoff contender with Joe Flacco as their starting quarterback. Does that start on Sunday in Minneapolis?
Well, they better be, because otherwise, I don't know what you wasted a number 4 pick here on a quarterback if you're not going to play him and allow this second-year quarterback, who, by the way, has only started 23 games since high school. So he, there is going to be a learning curve here. I don't know what everyone was expecting, but all right, if you're in a win now mode here instead of trying to develop your second-year quarterback, okay, well, then you better win this game. The problem is you're getting 5.5 points here. Why? Well, because the Minnesota defense at home is coming after Joe Flacco. Let's make no mistake about it. And the way you get to Joe Flacco is you get into his face. He is not mobile at all. They are not going to be able to run the ball all that well with Jonathan Taylor. Why? Because Minnesota's defense is a top 5 defense against the rush. So that's going to limit Jonathan Taylor, which means your entire handicap here has to be on whether or not you think the Colts and Joe Flacco can handle what is about to be coming at them as far as a pass rush goes. Now, I will say this. They got issues on the Minnesota offensive line as well. Darisaw out right now. They ended up getting, I believe, Cam Robinson for Jacksonville. But that is not the same. Darisaw is one of the best offensive linemen. Quisenberry also not good, not healthy, not going to play in this game. So they've got some issues protecting Sam Darnold here. And you also have a Colts defense that has been getting better as the season progresses. Kenny Moore up against Jefferson should be an interesting matchup, but this is all to me about whether or not you think Joe Flacco can handle the blitz. I have my concerns. I do, however, think we're probably getting some points in this game, Ben, so I wouldn't mind looking at it over at all in this one.
Been the story for Minnesota, Joe. They went under in 4 of those first 5 wins on the unbeaten start. They have gone over in each of their 2 losses, allowing 30-plus in each game, 61 total points. Indianapolis, what a cover wagon they are this year. They're a 4-4 football team, but they're 7-1 against the spread, including a perfect 5-0 ATS record when booked as an underdog. For most of the first month and a half of this season, Joe, wasn't feeling all that great around Philadelphia. The Eagles had a winning record at 3-2 and even 4-2, but wasn't overly optimistic. Last week maybe changed that with the dismantling of Cincinnati on the road against the Bengals, winning by 20 outright as a 2.5-point underdog. Now the Birds, 7.5-point home favorite against the struggling Jacksonville Jaguars. Can Philadelphia capitalize on the optimism and win big at home in the city of brotherly love on Sunday?
Yeah, well, I just told you, right? So the Jags trade their left tackle, Cam Robinson, and they just got a little bit worse on the offensive line, protecting Goldilocks here. Ben, they got no wide receivers in Jacksonville. The offensive line is worse. How are we getting over a total in this game with the way Philadelphia runs the ball?
Not sure, Joe. Jacksonville has gone over in 4 straight. Maybe that's what's helping. No Christian Kirk. No Brian Thomas Jr. It's not great for the Jags. Mike Blewitt joins us up next. It would not be a Football Friday live right here on the early line without the services of one Mike Blewitt. His analysis and insight for the Sunday slate here in week number 9 of this National Football League season. Blue, as always, thank you for your time here on this Football Friday.
Fired up to be with you guys. Joe's Jets get a win last night, so hopefully keep the good vibes rolling.
Let's see if we can. Let's go to a divisional duel on Sunday out in Seattle. In the NFC West, it's the Pacific Northwest. It's a Rams team that had won 2 games in 5 days to resurrect their season, capped off with that Thursday night victory last week at home against the Minnesota Vikings. The Seattle Seahawks started 3-0. Dropped 3 straight, won a game outright as an underdog in Atlanta against the Falcons, and then lost last week in a big way to Buffalo at home, not covering as a 3-point home dog. But Blue, some late news affecting this game in the week. Puka Nacua injured at practice, injured his knee. They do not expect it to be an overly severe injury, but again, puts his status in question for Sunday in Seattle. How do you break down this divisional duel that is a basic pick-em on that money line?
Yeah, and I think the problem with Puka is that he's been dealing with his knee injury for quite a while, right? So you have to wonder how consistently he's going to be in the lineup and how consistently he can perform. Obviously really good when he's in there, as is Cooper Kupp, but I think it's, to your point, it could impact the outcome of this matchup. I would say, though, since it is basically a pick-em, these 2 teams have been really inconsistent. I think Joe and I were both surprised at the performance by Seattle against Atlanta. I'm not as surprised that Buffalo took care of it, but they took care of them pretty easily out in Seattle, a long trip to get that W. I have to pick the Rams here because I think offensively, they're probably the most consistent unit of the 4 on the field on Sunday. it's a divisional home dog spot, so I don't generally like to bet into that. But you highlighted the fact that it's just 1.5 right now, Ben, and it's effectively a money line play. And I just trust the Rams and their coaching staff a little bit more than the Seahawks, admitting that it is a coin toss kind of game.
It just feels like that too, and I don't know. I don't know why the Browns, Mike, are so worried about a quarterback. Last year it was Flacco. This year it's Jameis Winston. They don't need a starting quarterback. They just need anybody off the scrap heap that can actually pass will do. I don't know what to make of it. They look like they're starting to round into what we thought they would be to begin the year. But now they got a Chargers team with Herbert looking much healthier week by week here. Boy, this is an interesting price. What are you going to do with this one?
Totally agree. What's fascinating, I think, about the Browns is not that they had Deshaun Watson struggles, but that Jameis comes in against the Ravens and lights it up. Their offense was good last week on every level, in every way.
Yeah.
So that's the most damning Deshaun Watson piece, is that not that Joe Flacco had a run of a few games, but Jameis came in and operated that offense the way that they needed to operate, throwing passes to everyone and scoring touchdowns. So that's what was so fascinating about that game last week. Now, both teams have the ability to establish the run here. We know that the Chargers are effectively the most run-heavy team in the entire league. So that 42.5 is a low number. And despite the fact that the Browns exploded last week against the Ravens, I think the Chargers are really going to make an effort to take the air out of the ball. The only thing that would upend that is if the Browns defense is, to your point, Joe, what we thought they might be going into the year. Again, they didn't stop the Ravens last week. They stopped them enough, but I just think that there's a chance that the Chargers run the ball effectively and keep this game lower scoring. That 1.5, though, like, who's going to win? I think it's one of the harder ones to pick up week.
To me, it's a little bit reactionary to Cleveland with Jameis. What Jameis did great last week was not turn the football over. But we have all lived through multiple Jameis Winston experiences in our NFL lives now. That is going to run out. And even Flacco last year, that elevated the ceiling of this Kevin Stefanski Browns offense, turned it over a ton. Of course, it should be noted, Ken Dorsey is the offensive play caller now for Cleveland. That change happening last week as well. The Chargers are a 4-3 football team. The Bolts have covered in all 4 victories. They have gone under in 3 of those 4 wins. They have gone under in 6 of 7 games this year. The only over was over 36.5 when they beat the Broncos 23-16, and Denver scored multiple times late to even make that game look relatively close. It really was not. Bryce Young remains the starter, Blewitt, in Charlotte. The Panthers at home this weekend, hosting the New Orleans Saints in a divisional duel. Good news for the Saints. Derek Carr back at practice, dealing with the oblique injury, is expected to line up and start on Sunday. It's why the Saints are a full touchdown favorite against Carolina. 43.5 is that total. Blue, you mention it all the time. Divisional game, home underdog. You have to start there. Is that how you feel about the Carolina Panthers hosting New Orleans?
I do mention it all the time, and it's worth mentioning here, but I'm just going to take the Panthers under 17.5. I know the Saints defense hasn't been lights out, but I just think I think the Panthers are going to continue to struggle offensively, so I'll take their under 17.5. That's the way I would play it. I would note too, though, that a touchdown spread with a total of 43.5, that starts to get to the area, guys, where you sort of have to take the points or you have to take the over. Having a blowout of a game of a touchdown or more with a total of 43, that's pretty tricky to hit both the under and the spread.
Yeah, quick note in that game too, Blue. You ready for this? Carolina is 1-14 against the number in the first half. Their last 15 games. 1-14. Yeah. They lose games by an average of 18 points per game. So maybe Derek Carr can put up enough points to at least cover the first half in that game here. Another absolute a must-watch game this weekend, Blue. It involves two teams that I have no idea who the quarterbacks are going to be. New England and Tennessee. Boy, oh boy, this sounds like a fun one. Only I can't tell you who's playing. So 38.5 is the total. 3.5 there for Tennessee. Who you going with here, Blue?
I mean, 38.5 is not low enough, I don't think. Excuse me. I think 38.5, I'd take the under there, even though it's low. In my opinion, as bad as the Pats have looked, they are the better coached football team. So you're going to give me the hook. I'll take the Pats. I could see them obviously going down there and losing by a field goal. I'll just give me the points on that one, because regardless of who's playing, Joe, I think they can keep it tight, but it's going to be a tight game because it's going to be so low scoring, in my opinion.
It's crazy to see the Titans laying a number to anybody. It's crazy to see Tennessee laying more than a flat 3 to anybody around the National Football League. I think it speaks to the Patriots. Of course, the outright victory last week against the New York Jets in a game the Jets should have easily won based on what they put up, and that was even with Jacoby Brissett in relief duty. Should be noted, though, 6 losses for New England this year. They have not covered the number in any of the 6. They did earn a push week number 2 as a field goal underdog at home against the Seattle Seahawks, but they had not covered in a bunch of games consecutively, entering last weekend against New York. And I will say this, Blue, to your point about that total, New England over in 5 of its 8 games this year. Tennessee over in 4 of its last 5. But New England, 20 points or less in all 5 Jacoby Brissett starts this season. And it does seem as though Jacoby is going to start on Sunday. At least that was the latest report as of yesterday. Plenty more from a Football Friday and the full preview of all 13 games across the NFL Week 9 Sunday slate with Mike Blewitt. It continues next on Sports. So if you are keeping count at home, we have now officially previewed all 13 NFL games on the Sunday slate in week number 9. But we dive even deeper with the insight of Mike Blewitt here on this Football Friday and look back on a few of the biggest and most marquee matchups on Sunday afternoon. In that afternoon hour, Blewitt, we go to Lambeau Field. It's the Green Bay Packers and the Detroit Lions. 6-1 Detroit, 6-2 Green Bay. In Lambeau, the Lions are an absolute wagon right now. They have covered in all 6 of their victories. They are laying 2.5 points on the road in Green Bay. It was 3.5 as of yesterday afternoon before we got word that Jordan Love was back at practice for the Packers yesterday, trying to recuperate from that groin injury that shelved him early in the second half on Sunday in Jacksonville. Still a little bit uncertain, Blewitt, if Jordan Love will start and play on Sunday. Obviously optimistic based on the practice reports yesterday. How do you break down a crucial divisional duel in Lambeau on Sunday?
I mean, this is arguably the game of the year to date, right? So we have a 6-1 Lions team who lost their only game by 1 score in a fluky manner, really just failing in the red zone like 7 times. And then we have the Packers that have only lost the 2 games by 2 points and 5 points in Brazil to open up the season. So I think it is concerning that Love was hobbled as badly as he was. He's not going to be 100%. It's his second injury of the year. And I think Lambeau and catching points is generally going to be a profitable position, but it's just 2.5. Nobody is stopping the Lions right now. I don't think the Titans are a good measuring stick for anybody. So you can get some overreactions coming out of games with them. But I just feel like the Lions are playing as good as anybody in the entire league, certainly offensively. And I'm not going to bet against them right now. I like the Lions in this matchup.
Liking the Lions to get it done there at Lambeau. A game we talked about earlier, Blewitt, in which is the highest total on the board, and I think with good reason, is Dallas taking on Atlanta here. Listen, Atlanta's defense certainly can be thrown upon. I think Dallas can't run the ball, so Dak's going to have no choice but to throw it 40 or more times in this one. CeeDee Lamb should have a huge day. But Kirk Cousins has done well against Dallas over the years. Any reason that we should not be looking at the over in this game?
I don't think so. I think, too, you can probably break it down by a half as well. Dallas, pretty good, and Atlanta together combined for just under 26 points a game in the first half. I just feel like these teams could get off to good starts. Joe, you and I have seen this all year. Atlanta plays in the wildest games, I think, of anybody in the entire league. Lots of special teams and defensive touchdowns, or at least mistakes that lead to quick touchdowns. So I could see a bunch of turnovers in this one leading to short fields for everybody. And I think that's going to actually, in this instance, aid with the point scoring. So yes, I do like the over. I would also posit the question to you guys both, like, how bad is it going to get for Dallas? Like, how badly could this season start to fall apart? If they lose this one in Atlanta, then they have Philly, Houston, at Washington in the next 3. Could they be a 3-7 team? You'd have to start thinking it's a possibility. I think they're good enough to pull off a win this weekend, but they're playing really bad football defensively, Ben.
It's a really good point, Blue. And, of course, Mike McCarthy is not under contract beyond this season. Could a coaching change that we expect at some point early in the offseason happen during the middle of the year at the midway point? If Dallas looks lifeless and loses in Atlanta, perhaps I would say so. This Cowboys team, Blue, we joke about them all the time in terms of their outright postseason outlook. 6-1 before the year, one of the 3 or 4 best prices entering the season in the NFC. Wouldn't bet it with either of your two money. But again, we expect the Cowboys to be a double-digit win football team and at least earn a playoff spot. They're 3-4. All 3 victories have come away from the Stars, so I guess good news, they're in Atlanta. But the Cowboys priced to win the NFC Championship right now, 24-1. Good news for the Cowboys. Again, 3 of their 4 wins away from Dallas. The Falcons just 1-4 against the number at home this year. Blewitt, here's an intriguing line for a lot of people, I think, looking at the Sunday slate based on previous performance. The Broncos are a 5-3 football team, still catching 8.5 from the Baltimore Ravens, who were the hottest team in the NFL entering last week. Of course, lost outright as a 7.5-point road underdog in Cleveland. The Ravens have been booked as a 7-point favorite or greater twice this year. They've lost outright in both. Is this spread too large in favor of the flock, especially with Lamar Jackson missing the last 2 days of practice?
I understand why it is where it is. I think there's still – Denver's defense has been really good this year, but I still think that the books are telling you and the market is telling you that nobody really respects the Broncos offense to be able to get into a shootout, that they're not quite good enough to be able to slow down Lamar in this spot and come away with, get inside the point spread here. So 8.5 is a ton. I would prefer to isolate the Ravens in this one. I do think they are good enough to put up points on this Broncos defense in a significant way. And their number is 27.5 right now. It's being bet evenly on both sides. I very often isolate the Ravens team total. I don't always get it right. I think I have it right this weekend, and I like them to put up points, even if they, and are the Broncos really going to stick with them? I think it's when you start to think. I'll trust the Ravens team total more than anything in this one before I trust the 8.5, because it's a lot.
It's a good point. It's what Joe was saying earlier in the show, breaking down that game as well. If the flock, who was a little bit pissed off after faltering last week, comes out guns blazing, can the Broncos keep pace? Denver, 3rd best scoring defense in the NFL, allowing just 15 points per game. Baltimore, bottom 7, allowing more than 26 points per game. Not what you expect when you think of Ravens defensive football. Mike Blewitt, thank you very much. Oh, no, we got one more segment. What am I even doing? We're talking big picture with Blue up next. That's on me. I apologize, Blue. Thanks for being here. We'll see you after the break.
You get rid of me yet, buddy.
Live right here on a Football Friday. Mike Blewitt, of course, is still here for a third consecutive segment, and we are so grateful for that. Blue, thanks for being here once again. My mistake right before the break. Anyway, let's go big picture now, Blue, because this weekend is week number 9. It's the opening Sunday of November. Monday Night Football ends in Arrowhead as the Chiefs take on the Buccaneers. After that, Blue, midway point of the NFL season. First half in the books, second half remains. We start to firmly focus on that playoff picture as we go later into November and, of course, into December. Here are the Super Bowl 59 odds at this point. The Chiefs looking to make history as the first ever team to win 3 consecutive Lombardi trophies, or even as a back-to-back Super Bowl champ appear in a third consecutive Super Bowl. The Ravens, the second best price at plus 650. The Lions now the NFC Championship favorites in front of the 49ers. That reflected in the Super Bowl odds as well. The Bills round out the top 5 at 9-1. Of those 5 teams with a triple-digit number to win Super Bowl 59 in New Orleans. Blewitt, as you look at those 10 best prices, or perhaps the top 5, how closely compact do you think everybody is in the hunt for a Super Bowl title?
I think it's pretty fascinating in the NFC right now because it's arguable that the Lions look like the best team in football. Certainly they have the style points to go with it. Joe and I are both on the Packers from the beginning of the season, and I think there's a lot to like about the Packers. If Love gets healthier, this team could be a little stronger as we get towards playoff time, as it could look even better than they look right now, right? There's a couple of teams like that. Ditto the 49ers, who are 4-4 right now, desperately needed this bye week. They'll potentially get McCaffrey and Dre Greenlaw back in the near future. And they are a team that's had slow starts, but finishes strong. This year, though, for the Niners, they have to go to Green Bay. They have to go to Buffalo. They're playing the Bears and the Rams late, and I don't know that the Niners are going to go on this 8-game win streak like they have in years past. But I say that to say that the Niners could be more dangerous in the playoffs than their record makes them appear. So that's what's fascinating to me about the NFC. The thing I would say about the AFC, and we've covered it on here before, is that Mahomes' presence constantly distracts people from how good this defense is. It's been going on for a couple of years now. And people are like, they don't score a lot of points. Look at all those interceptions that Mahomes has. They need more help at receiver. Some of those are true, yes, but they dominate people defensively. And every time they go on the road and they're an underdog, people are like, they're not going to go into San Francisco and get that win because the offense isn't good enough, except that they terrorized Brock Purdy and won that game easily. I just think until somebody solves the Chiefs' defensive dominance, it's going to be tough for anybody else to get a win. I'm just being honest.
How do we correlate the MVP odds here? Does the MVP come from the NFC, the AFC? And I mean, if you think Detroit comes out of the NFC, should we be looking at Jared Goff? And, Mahomes at 5-1, not the greatest of years, but let's face it, if he's there again, how is Mahomes not winning it also? It's strange.
A little Heisman-esque, right, with the quarterback on the team with the best record. Yep. It gets a lot of favoritism, and I think Goff is a really interesting one. Our producer, Joe Frank Bartunek, on the Sunday in-game live, he's been talking about Goff for a while. So I have some Goff shares in the futures market, and I think if the Lions continue to impress like this, he is probably going to be the one standing near the top, simply because Amon-Ra St. Brown can rack up stats, but neither running back, and it's a hard award for a running back to win nowadays, but neither running back has the lion's share, excuse the pun, of the carries or the touches. So Gibbs and Montgomery don't stand out from one another necessarily in a race like that. So I think Goff is a really interesting one, but you see the two guys near the top as well with Lamar and Josh Allen. They're going to put up eye-popping numbers. It's just, can Goff come close to that and have the Lions standing at 15-2? I think that's the way he gets the most consideration.
Nearly a 40-1 price for Jared Goff in the offseason, even after the big payday, even after the retention of Ben Johnson. That number now 6-1. Mahomes still a negative TD to INT ratio. Lamar has looked like an MVP at times. Will that voter fatigue play out? Josh Allen playing clean and efficient football in Buffalo is 6-2. Mike Blewitt, now we bid you farewell. But thank you for your time. We'll see you on Sunday here on Sports Grid. Have a great weekend. Hour number 3 is up next.